Welcome to the Love Now Movement interview series hosted by Australian powerhouse spiritual teacher Susie Mazzoli. Together with a New York filmmaker Kevin Lewis, presents cutting-edge information in the field of consciousness, spirituality, science, and culture. We present in-depth interviews with the international movers and shakers, agents of change, and explore our rapid, expanded world. Come and join us on our Love Now across the world.
I have to tell you that we have a very big vegetable garden up here. You know, we try very hard to work with permaculture and organic and the vibration. We put crystals in the soil. We do companion planting, and we grow vegetables and herbs for us to eat, and obviously to make medicines and things. And last year we had a group of people up here and was helping. Some of my students came up from New York City and got their hands in the dirt, and we were playing your CD, the one that you have with Krishna Das. And everybody was floating around the garden and planting the seeds, and we just kept hitting replay. And we had a bumper crop. And all throughout the season I was out there, and I had my little iPad in a paper box so it wouldn't get the beating sun, and we were listening to these incredible vibrations that were so deeply felt by everyone that was working in the garden. And there was such a beautiful interplay too with the birds that came along and were playing with your CD. So I have to say thank you so much for all the work you've done, for your new CD and your new book and your other CDs, and all of the work that you have done in music and composition, for putting out these tremendous vibrations into the world to bring about peace. So thank you so much, and I'm very, very honoured to be speaking to you today.
Well, thank you. I'm honoured to be here as a part of your series. And that album, you know, Krishna Das, the vibration that flows through him has that effect, I think. And we were very fortunate to be able to work with him.
For me, KD, it's that the bhakti, the love, that quality of love. I don't see it in so many people in this world, but he just resonates with that incredible frequency of devotion and love, and it's in all of your music. I hear it.
Thank you. I think with Ram Dass actually said it best about KD, that he is singing only to his guru.
Yes.
It is just this love that he has for his guru. And it just, everybody feels it.
And Neem Karoli Baba, his guru, I know that he said that even though he's passed, that you can still take him on as your guru.
Many people have, yes.
And to me too, that love of the guru is really, the guru is the manifestation of everything. That's so true. For me it's the love of the guru, but it's really the love of everything, that all That's that true. Is, which is very much what we're working with the Love Now movement, that everything is divine and divine is everything.
And we're all connected to it. All of us are connected to all of it.
Tell me, do you have a guru? What is your spiritual path now?
Well, my main teacher is Patabhi Jois, who left this earth at the age just under 93 years old. He was the teacher of Ashtanga yoga, which I started studying in 1997 after doing yoga for almost 10 years before that. And then I discovered Ashtanga yoga. And I studied both here in this country when he was visiting, and then I went to India to study with him a couple of times as well. And he was an amazing teacher. He taught to the individual. So if someone needed love and nurturing, that was what they got. If someone was becoming spiritually arrogant, then he would treat them differently. He was really wonderful in that way. And he was a Sanskrit scholar, and he was also just a student of the Vedas, and very broad knowledge. He didn't speak a lot of English, or at least he pretended not to speak a lot of English. So his teaching was really came to his students through his hands, through his touch.
Do you mean you could feel energy through his touch?
Well, it was a physical practice. It's a form of yoga. His teacher was Krishnamacharya, who is also the teacher of Desikachar, his son, and also of Iyengar as well. So Krishnamacharya is, the font of a lot of different lineages, and Ashtanga Yoga, Patabhi Jois studied with him for many years, and then went on to formulate his own branch of the lineage. And it is a physical practice, and for the most part, it's taught to the individual. His classes were a gathering of his students. There's 6 series in what he teaches, and students would gather at a time, and all would do their individual practices, no matter where they were. He did do some lead classes, but for the most part, it was a group of people who were all practicing in the same room doing different things. And he would go around and assist people as they needed assistance. And he had three sort of aphorisms that he said. They're just sort of his hallmark. One is practice, practice, practice. Mm-hmm. Another is 99% practice, 1% theory, so that it's really in the doing of the thing. And
in the doing, that's in the actual physical asanas, yeah?
It is.
Ashtanga is very, very hard physical.
Physical practice, but he felt it was a gateway to the other 8 limbs that are set out by Patanjali, which are more of a spiritual pathway, and to eventually to meditation and samadhi.
So the actual physical practice of the asanas, the postures, for those people that have not practiced yoga, it actually opens you up so that you can go into the higher self, go into the more advanced yogas.
The 8 limbs of Patanjali start with the yamas and the niyamas. Yamas are 5 sort of guidelines for how we should be within ourselves. The niyamas are 5 guidelines of how we should interact with the world around us. Then comes asana, then pranayama, which is control of breath, pratyahara, which is a closing in, then dharana, which is concentration, then dhyana, which is meditation, and then samadhi, which is the higher state. And Patabhi Jois said, I teach Patanjali Yoga. This was really the foundation of his asana teaching. But he felt that for the 8 limbs, that the entryway was through asana, and then through opening and cleansing the body, cleansing the nadis and the nerve system, that we then want to go back and investigate these ideas of how to have a correct way of interacting with both ourselves and the world, and then move on into meditation after that. So 99% practice, 1% theory was the second one that he used to say all the time. And the third one was God is in everything. So the idea...
God is in everything.
Or God is everything, actually.
Everything is divine.
So we are connected to everything. And I didn't start Ashtanga Yoga till I was 48, 49 years old. So
a couple of years ago.
Well, no, I'm gonna be 65 in March. So.
But you practice every day.
Yeah. Not every day, because sometimes that doesn't happen. But I have a pretty diligent, dedicated practice. Yes. So my first time in Mysore, I think I'd been there a couple of days, and I was struggling, and because. There's 6 series. I was still dealing with the first series the first time I went, which is, sort of rudimentary. Now I do first and second, but, the more advanced series, I never gotten there. But anyway, I was there sort of struggling. And there's a ritual at the end of practice. You go up and say hello, depending on what level of comfort you have towards the idea of having a guru. You either go say hello or ask for his blessing or touch his feet, which seems sort of cultish or over the top for Westerners, but really is the Indian tradition. By touching his feet, you are acknowledging that he stands on the shoulders of his previous teachers, that this is acknowledgement of it's not just a surrender to him, it is an acknowledgement that he really is the continuation of a lineage. Anyway, so I went up to thank him and say hello, and he said, "You're perfect." And I couldn't take it in, so I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Today you perfect." And I know he wasn't talking about my asana practice, which was far from perfect. It was more about that third phrase that I said. It was more that we're all perfect. We're all perfect in every way. We just don't recognize it. And again, it was him teaching directly to me. He could see that at that moment, that was what I needed. I needed that sort of love and connection, and provided it to me. Some people say he was a very harsh teacher and very hard. That was not my experience at all. He was always very loving and just really supportive and nurturing with me. So anyway, and as a result of the practice, actually even before I had met him, I was about a year into it and was practicing with some friends, and we decided to do second series, which I had not yet done, which is a lot of backbending. And it just kind of, I hadn't done it before, and that weekend it felt that just sort of the shell around my heart had been cracked open as a result of the practice. And so that was really sort of the awakening for me, and it kind of turned my life upside down. Everything went up, upended, and changed in relationship, change in where I was living, change in I was writing music for television before that. And then started working more on the overtone singing and went on from there. So he is my main teacher. I've been to hear many teachings by the Dalai Lama. I also have a wonderful Vedanta teacher who was in Woodstock but now travels all over the world, named Shuberji. I don't know if you've ever heard. And she has been just wonderful. Studied with her for probably 10 years. And I do refer to some Vedanta in the book, and it's really through her teaching that I came to understand the concepts there. So those are my main teachers.
When you say that your whole life turned upside down,
yes.
when you began the second series,
yes.
and the backbending, which is obviously very much about cracking open the heart, right? Did you feel, and you said relationships changed and everything changed, did you find a different you inside? Was it deepening into the deeper aspect of you, or was it a new you? What actually happened to that you, that identity?
That's a good question. I think primarily the feeling was just one of a kind of joyful love towards everyone and everything. But also there was a kind of permission to be who I really was.
But a lot of things had to change for you to come to that place, or was it external changes as well?
No, I think there was an internal change, which was, it's okay to be who I really am.
And that, and that really am was underneath?
Was underneath, yes. And then the external also changed as well. I changed my living situation, and my marriage disintegrated. I just started becoming interested in more of a spiritual path, and felt so relieved in a way to have arrived there, because, you know, I've done a lot of music in my life. I've played in rock bands and jazz bands, and, you know, with rock and roll, you're always supposed to be the bad boy, and I could never quite live up to that. And jazz, you know, everybody's got such a heavy attitude.
Right.
I could never live up to that. But here was a world in which the sort of ethical and moral underpinnings that I'd been raised in or with were embraced and encouraged.
So you didn't grow up having any type of Hindu or Buddhist background?
No, actually my father was the child of Protestant missionaries in China. He was born in China and lived there for the first 12 years of his life. So he, I think, was somewhat reactive against that. He did not really participate in organized religion. I mean, I was sort of shuttled around to different kind of Sunday schools when I was a kid, but nothing really seriously took.
And you grew up here on the East Coast?
Yes, East Coast, New England boy, basically, New England and New York. And
so when did you start to get that hint or that flavor of what is now your spiritual belief system?
Well, I think that, you know, through the practice and the community and meeting different teachers who were students of Patabhi Jois and then studying with him, that it was something that kind of flowered and unfolded for me.
But it didn't happen until you're saying your late 40s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So up until then there was no interest?
There was no peace. It was a constant struggle. Just to go back a little bit about my dad, that even though he wasn't interested in organized religion, he was one of the most moral, and I mean that in the good sense of the word, not judgmental, because he was not judgmental, but and ethical. He was just a sincerely good person, and always, you know, for me, in terms of politics, always on the right side of every issue, the correct side, the good, the trying to, you know, help other people side of the issue, and so that, I think, was the way I was raised and was in me, and just didn't really have an opportunity to surface until I had this kind of change in my life. So, yeah.
Was it when it actually happened for you? Because, you know, so many of the people that we talk to, we always talk about these, you know, these aha moments of, you know, whoa, and then everything changed, and there usually is in a lot of people's lives a very dramatic kind of shift where, with a lot of changes in relationships and work, and I myself went through the same thing. I was working for George Soros, the infamous financier.
Sure,
I was an executive director for him in Eastern Europe.
Much demonized, I think.
Yeah, I would call him a controversial figure, much as I could be too, right? And it's so interesting to see what people say about him now than what people were saying about him when I was working in the foundation.
Well, he has become kind of a negative icon for the conservative right in a just like awful way. So
yeah. Well, I was working in the art field, and I was working as the cultural organisation within the cultural organisation, the foundation, and then I had this aha moment myself. And my husband died of cancer, and I suddenly just realised things need to shift.
Yes.
And I realise now, like working as a teacher and having lots of people around me that are also going through what you and I have been through, which is, I call it coming out of the box, really. There's that, I don't need to fit into this place anymore, and I don't need to really adhere to these particular constrictions of society or family or culture, and I'd like to step out. And I find a lot of people come to whether it's a meditation or yoga, through yoga or through Buddhist meditation, but there is definitely this very big shift that we all know about. I am hoping and praying that people don't have to go through it in a painful way or in a very dramatic way, as many of us have. But when you did go through it, was there one moment for you which was literally like the lifting of the blinders, or was there one psychedelic moment where you really realized my world is different now? That aha moment.
Well, I think coming off that particular weekend of practices, something had I mean, as I say, I feel like I had that scab, that protection of my heart that we all build up as a result of insults and trauma, and it's a self-protective thing, and that.
And what did it? This was when you were in Mysore. You were in India.
No.
You were
This
here?
was just with some friends up in Great Barrington.
When you were actually doing the practices.
When I did the second series practice for the first time.
So tell me what it felt like. Like, what was the feeling in your body?
Well, I don't know that I, at that moment, connected it to my body. It was more of really an emotional shift. It was like a dawning, or just just the release of that feeling of love in my heart. And then the universe has a way, once you open your eyes in that particular way, the universe has a way of sort of showing you what you're supposed to be doing. In that I came home, I felt such love towards these people I'd been practicing with, and the other yoga teachers that I'd had at that time. So I decided I was going to make a CD of the 7 chakras and have a short sound meditation on each of the chakras. And I did it as a Christmas present for 12 people. And I was doing television stuff and other stuff, but I made time to do this and sent it out as a Christmas gift to these 12. Most of them were yoga teachers, people who I knew or had studied with. And they started playing it in their classes. And people were calling me up saying, can I have a copy of that? And I was individually burning the copies on my computer. And it wasn't something that I intended to do. It wasn't a path that now I'm going to do this. This was just something that kind of, I didn't choose to do it. It kind of chose me. And these were overtone singing. This was something that I had been dabbling with and interested in for many years. And then that was the moment where it was sort of became more refined, and I started paying more attention to it, and then eventually had to do a larger run because more and more people were interested in it. It kind of took on a life.
This is the late 90s. Yeah?
Yes, exactly, right.
The overtone singing, can you please tell us exactly what that means for...
Okay. It is both an ancient practice and a very new practice. It's ancient in that there are several different lineages that employ it. The Tibetan Buddhist monks who use a low, growly also do these harmonics above the low sound when they chant, and it's not a musical experience for them.
No, I have to say I've made many pilgrimages to visit Karmapa and my teachers in Nepal and India, and I've stayed in monasteries where we're up at 5 o'clock in the morning for hour-long ceremonies, pujas. That sound when there is a room, and I've quite often been the only female in the room. Sometimes there's 50, 70 monks.
Right.
There is nothing that I can, there's no way that I can explain in words what that experience is. It is the resonation of every single cell in your body. It's unbelievable. And
as I'm sure you know, the motivation, there are several, it's not, as I say, it's not a musical experience. It's a form of prayer.
Yes.
And the reason that they use the low voice is twofold. One is that it shows the fierceness of their practice. It shows the ferocity with which they commit to becoming one with the sound, really. And the other is to blur the actual pronunciation so that for people who are not initiated into the tantric practice, it's obscured. So it is not easily accessible. Yeah. So there's that particular lineage which has that component to it, And then there's a more musical lineage, which is both in Mongolia and in Tuva, and that's comes more out of a herding culture, and it is a folk music, and they do a different kind of constriction, which I can't really do. They constrict the vocal cords to get a buzzing sound, and then by tuning the air in the mouth to one of the harmonics. If you've ever played guitar, you know there are ways that you can subdivide the string that give you a harmonic, an upper pitch of the sound of the string. So much like the pads on a flute or saxophone alters the length of the vibrating column of air within the instrument, we're trying to tune the column of air within our mouth and throat by using our tongue and jaw to actually form the air into just the right space so that it resonates at one of the harmonic frequencies. Harmonics are perfect, actually mathematically perfect subdivisions of the sound. And in all musical instruments, harmonics are present. Some, and it's actually how we can tell the difference, say, between the sound of a sustained violin and the sound of a sustained flute. The violin is very rich in harmonics, where the flute is fairly pure tone. And we actually produce harmonics as we speak all the time. Our vowel sounds, our accent, particular harmonics, they're called formants in the way linguists think of it. But it's the way we distinguish between an ah sound and an oo sound. If we spoke in one tone, basically that comes out of our vowel sounds, comes out of that idea of emphasizing, I mean, not idea, it's something that just evolved as speech evolved. But so it's, those things are related, and so the Tuvans and Mongolians have found a way really to bury the tone that we're making with our vocal cords and emphasize this harmonic. Okay, I'll try and do a little bit for you. So it's really that upper whistling sound you hear is actually tuning the air in the mouth and throat. Because I'm making a main tone with my voice. And there are many, many variations that you can do with that.
So what is that, when I'm listening to that,
Yes.
what is it actually doing to my frequency? What is the intention?
Well, you know, the harmonic, as I said, is a mathematically, harmonics appear everywhere in nature. I mean, from subatomic particles to the distribution of the planets in our solar system. And what it is that there is a tendency in nature to align in these mathematically perfect sequences. I mean, as well as chaos, there is also this kind of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but one place that we recognize it is in sound, and the evolution of music really came out of this recognition of these perfect vibrations. And so it's no in Western music, it's no coincidence that in these lovely large cathedrals where Gregorian chant was taking place, that first it was all unison, and then the fifth above the unison started to creep in, which in fact is the main tone is the first harmonic, it's the second harmonic. And then the next thing was parallel, which again is the next harmonic. So that was there, that idea, and then all of the permutations that came out of that. Then around the period of Bach, who wrote the well-tempered clavier, he took pieces and wrote them in all 12 keys. If you were to tune a piano, it was a way to deal with keyboards. If you were to take a piano and tune it harmonically for, let's say, C major, the first key we'd call it, if you went to any other key, it wouldn't sound in tune, because those perfect intervals in that key don't fit in other keys. So there was when keyboards became popular, there was a real movement towards finding some kind of compromise, so that you could be playing in C major and then all of a sudden go to C sharp major and it would still sound good. And so the perfection of the interval that occurs in the harmonics were altered slightly. And so I think, actually, neurologically, what we do when we hear that altered pitch is that our brain sort of makes it right. But when you hear that perfectly aligned pitch, nothing has to happen with the neural pathways that go from the ear to that part of the brain. So there's a kind of letting go. There's a kind of meditative something that happens as a result of the perfection of the interval.
Does it so this type of overtone singing, does it bring the brain into a theta state, perhaps?
I think it engages both sides of the brain, mm-hmm. and yes, allows for I think there's something about the perfection of the tone that does, yes. And
it brings the cellular body, so the physiological body, into some sort of
cardiovascular to be honest with you, I don't know about things on that level.
Why do we feel so good when we hear these sounds that you are making with prana?
Well, I think, I think it partly has to do with this just kind of letting go, that the brain kind of lets go, mm-hmm. that there is a kind of, in the perfection of the tone, there is something that aligns both sides of the brain. We don't have to work to hear the perfection of the interval. We're not trying to alter it slightly mm-hmm. back to the perfection of the interval. So there's just a kind of release that happens.
Is there a spiritual intention that you're putting forward with the group when you're singing?
Of course, yeah.
Yes. So we could say that that's being amplified, correct, through the sound?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more getting out of the way and letting what the divine or the universe or God or whatever name you're comfortable with come through you. You know, mm-hmm. that you work on the technique, as with all things, and I'm sure this is your experience with your practice, is that you work on these techniques. You work on these techniques. You practice, you practice, you practice, as Patabhi Jois said. Mm-hmm. And then you let go of those. They are so innate in what you're doing that you don't have to think about them or work on them. And you get out of the way, and then you let whatever it is come through you and guide it and be it. You are, as the famous phrase, you are only the flute on which the music is played.
So you have 4 CDs out now since that very first one, The Waking of the Cobra, 1999, the meditation through the chakras. Yeah.
I actually have 10 albums out before that, because I've been
as a musician.
Mm-hmm. But since I've been working on my yoga and music together, there are 4 overtone singing CDs.
Which is with the group Prana?
The first one was a solo effort. Mm-hmm. Waking the Cobra was the one that I made for my 12 friends. Mm. And then I was touring around trying to do that in yoga studios, and I was in Nevada doing an evening, and I said, okay, I'd like everybody please to sing, there were 100 some odd people there. I said, I'd like everybody to sing this pitch, please. Ah, and what came back was, there were maybe 4 people in the room that could match my pitch, and everybody else was all over the place. So at that point I decided, well, it's probably a good idea to put a group together to support the music that I was doing, and then went on and did the Eternal Embrace, which is based on the 8 limbs of yoga that I was speaking about, vocal meditations on that. And then the album was Krishna Das. And then the new one, which is called Sadhana, and it's really about the idea of prana coming together every Monday night for the last 14 years.
Wow.
Every Monday night, whether we have an upcoming performance or not. And it is a kind of practice that we do together. I mean, sometimes it's more like group therapy because you get that many people together. Of course, you're going to have all different kinds of dynamics, but it really is, when we're doing it correctly, it's a kind of focused singing meditation. So.
And this album, 14 years in the creation, so to speak, is it only human voice?
It's human voice and percussion. Jerry Murata plays some percussion, and there are also some hand percussion on there as well. So.
And what would you say is the spiritual intention of this CD?
Practice, practice, practice.
And what should I be practicing?
Whether it's making clay pots, or whether it's singing, or whether it's, whatever that path that pulls you, whatever you are put on this earth to do, and hopefully it's something that gives something to other people.
So is it, when you say practice, it's not practicing so that you'll be really good at it or that you'll be the best at it. It's practicing so that you're actually in the zone, so that you're in your divine, intentional potential.
It is that getting the technique so much that you can then let it go and just be in that zone, or letting God or the universe or the divine flow through us.
Do you speak about that in your book? Now, this is your new book, The Practice of Nada Yoga.
Yes.
Meditation on the Inner Sacred Sound.
Yes.
Do you speak about practice in the book?
Yes, I do a little bit, somewhat. Nada Yoga is often, in these days, taught as an extension of North Indian classical music, of rag. And and that's a very worthwhile and, I think, valid study, but I was interested in something deeper than that, or not deeper, but different from that. And for many years, there is the idea of the 4 levels of sound. This comes out of the Vedas. So the first being the gross sounds, the sound around us that we hear. The second being sounds of the mind, which are both sound memories that we have, those tape loops we have, all of the sounds that we can conjure or bring into our consciousness that we have stored in our mind or our subconscious. The third level are visual sounds, and this is a sort of connection between our what we see and what we hear, and the relationship between those two things. The fourth level is para, which means beyond, which is the inner sacred sound. And I sort of dabbled in Nada Yoga for many years, teaching those first 3 levels, but I didn't really understand or know what the 4th level was. I kept going and studying and trying to find it. And then I was taking a teaching on the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is an Indian text. And when you get into the 4th chapter, they're about halfway through, it says, "Here now begins the teaching of Nada Yoga as taught by Gorakhnath, who was a sage in the 11th and 12th and 13th century." And it outlines this study for finding this internal sound. So with all of my 50 years of being a musician and understanding of sound, then taking this and turning it inward to listening for this internal sound. I was doing these practices that were outlined, going back to the practices, reading them, sitting, doing the meditation back and forth, and then expanded that search out into other Indian texts. And so that was really the turning point for me in terms of this particular meditation. And it was very helpful in my life.
So what is the sound?
Well, you know,
Is it different for everyone? Of course, I'm thinking that it must be Om.
It is, well, that's one of sort of the doorways in. The way it's outlined in the Indian texts are aligning it or comparing it to sounds in our environment that we would hear. Thunder, the sound of a waterfall, the sound of the ocean, the sound of crickets, the sound of bees, the sound of a flute, the sound of a drum. And it's not only different for different people, for individuals, it's different from day to day. For me, the most powerful form of it is this kind of very high-pitched, luminous, sparkling sound. And it, for me, in many ways, parallels very definitely the sound of the harmonic that I had been working on for many
And this
years.
is the sound that you actually hear when you're in meditation?
Yes,
or,
you do.
Right. Is that something that some people I've heard call an angelic sound? Would that be?
Yes. I think that would probably be a good description of it.
Is that the sound that I've also heard is really behind a lot of the animal sounds that we hear as well?
Well, you know, there's that famous recording of the slowed down crickets where they're actually rubbing their legs together and creating harmonics, which is what that makes that beautiful sound. It also, you know, people talk about tinnitus, which is, you know, a
ringing in the
sound
ears. Yeah.
And doctors will tell you that is, you know, an incurable thing, and it's just going to get worse as you get older, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. And then I think it was Brahmananda who said, "Oh no, this is a message from God telling you to pay attention to your inner life." So tinnitus isn't the sound, but it is actually, you can use it as a point of meditation. In the teachings, in the Vedic teachings, they recommend sticking your fingers in your ears to stop all sound. But I find that what you eventually hear is the sound actually of your musculature vibrating. And so I recommend using foam earplugs that you can get at any drugstore as a starting point, because when you get more deeply into it, you don't need them. But in order to really focus, it helps to blot out all of the external sound. Now, scientists will tell you, oh, well, this is just a sensory deprivation hallucination that you're hearing. That you'll hear sounds, but it's just your brain providing you with sounds that because there's nothing coming in to keep your mind occupied. Well, that may be true, but there's also something about it that when you do focus on it, it's like a portal into a deeper state of consciousness.
Is it a portal into your multidimensional self, like into your ocean of consciousness? If you're like a drop of consciousness now, and then you go into your great big self?
Well, yes. I mean, I think actually the sound eventually falls away. It is a way in. As part of the meditation that I have there is also the third eye meditation, where you're looking up towards your third eye and seeing light and color, and eventually the blue pearl.
The blue pearl? Tell us about the blue pearl.
Well, you know, Muktananda used to speak about the blue pearl, and it is a point of focus when you get into the meditation, where you actually see a sort of indigo purple dot, often sort of surrounded by saffron, and it is much like our breath or a candle, it is just a point of meditation where we focus our single-pointed attention.
As a meditational practice.
Yes, exactly.
So your book, The Practice of Nada Yoga, your new book, you have some personal stories in here, and you also have some theory, and you also have a lot of meditation practices, and the whole idea is to help people develop some new meditation practices to deepen into their own divine self?
Yes, exactly. It's very nuts and bolts. There are short chapters, each of which start off with a short story and then some explanation and then a short meditation, and building towards the nada meditation. And one of the underlying premises of the book is, in terms of sound, just like as we're having a conversation here, if I am listening to you speak, then I'm not talking. And this happens both on an external level and an internal level. If we are focusing our listening, if our listening is extremely focused, then we can't be having the internal dialogue. It quiets the internal dialogue down. And that goes right from all of the external things right into the deepest levels of the Nada Yoga practice.
Of all of the wonderful things that you have in your book and of all the other books out there, what do you think is different? What is something that you're putting forward that no one else has up to date?
Well, my experience with Nada Yoga is that there are many lovely books out there. Many of them are transcriptions of wonderful teachers' talks, but there's never been really a step-by-step approach, very instructional on how to go into the deeper levels of Nada Yoga. And I wrote the book that I have always been looking for, which was a real instructional book on how to achieve these deeper states of consciousness.
Do you recommend that all people try these practices, or is it for a certain segment of the population? They say that we should be careful about our spiritual practice, like, don't let the Kundalini rise too quickly.
Well,
is this open for all?
I think that it's open for all, but I think that really the people who are going to get through the 4 levels of the sound are the people that's their path. Mm-hmm. I mean, other people can sort of dabble through it, but they're not going to get the benefit that one who is really, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm really interested in. I think that's true with any practice, that as people are, sort of looking around for what's right for them, they go into something and then it falls away. And those who really it's meant to be, they'll find it and they'll go through it.
Well, sound is definitely receiving a lot more attention now, yes. Especially now we are 2014 than it used to. And I know too, playing myself the Himalayan bowls for 15 years, that it's something that's now becoming actually quite interesting, and people want to know about it. Also, I just have to say that last 2012, December 21st, we did a large ceremony here in Woodstock where we had 108 people, and we omed from dawn to dusk. We did the mighty Om, and I know that you're also inviting people during Easter time to do oming as well.
Yes, every Easter for about that same period of time, we get together at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and invite people all over the world to join us to sing an Om, just like as you did. Right. But we only do it for an hour.
Yeah, we did it all day. And I must say, I was amazed that I was leading the Om, not that I have any wonderful voice or training in that way. I did it as a spiritual work. But I found that I was completely unflustered, that I had no problem with my breath, that I literally omed straight all day long, and I didn't lose my voice. Tell me just what to you is Om?
Well, it's the first vibration. It is that sound. It is the anahata, unstruck sound. It is the sound that begins before the Great Bang and goes all the way through the endless future.
What does it do when we make that sound to us, and what does it do to everybody around us?
Well, ideally it connects us to the greater universe.
Because we've become fragmented in some way, or
it brings it into our awareness. It brings our vibration into harmony with the vibration of the universe. It's just something that we don't pay attention to. We live in a culture of screens and fast and distraction, and it alters the breath. It makes us slow the breath down.
It increases the breath.
It increases the breath,
yeah.
And that's not something that we normally do in this culture, unless we're singing and with other people or alone.
So we could definitely recommend to viewers of our interview that we Om for a few minutes every day.
Yeah, and it's
for health.
And it's no coincidence that there are many the Jains, the Buddhists, the Hindus, all have it as either intrinsic part of chanting, or an opening or closing in chanting. It changes the breath. It changes our organized religions. All have singing and chanting because we're singing with other people. We're chanting. We're changing our breath, which makes us open to new ideas and ways of thinking.
Well, it changes the frequency of everything around us. The Love Now movement is traveling around the world now. We're doing a big world tour for the next 3 years.
Good for you.
America and hopefully all over the world. And we are doing these flash mobs where we get together for 10 minutes and 8 seconds. We try to do it at 1:08 in the afternoon, and we're oming for universal peace, and we invite people to come and om with us. It's our way of hopefully increasing the frequency of the earth and the people. So let me ask you the famous Love Now movement question.
Right.
So what is love? That's the longest pause we've ever had.
I think it is, for me, it is the connection of all of our hearts through vibration. And it is a connection that opens the heart. It is that joyful recognition of our connection with all things everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Susie.